The halls of Congress, quiet, clean, official. Here's where the people's business supposedly gets done. How does money dictate policy in Washington?
Well, it's unfortunate, but obviously it buys media time. It also buys constant mail efforts. And also, obviously, you support candidates who will ultimately come to the United States Congress who may vote your way.
The largest contributors to political campaigns in America are the financial institutions. The second largest contributors are large real estate developers. That means that if you're running for office, you have to get elected by promising to support policies that are supported by the real estate sector and by the financial sector that lends to the real estate sector. So the politicians are pretty much bought.
And the credit card industry is the leading profit engine of the banking industry, generating pre-tax earnings of over $30 billion annually. Some members of Congress do worry about the debt problem. They know we are living on borrowed money and borrowed time.
This is a multi-billion-dollar industry. They are making more dollars on the excessive fees than they would at any time on the alleged goods that you are supposed to be buying. This is, of course, a calamity waiting for the Congress to wake up and provide some relief.
Some have stood up to the card companies in fiery hearings.
Since this bill was written, Mr. Speaker, Enron, WorldCom, Adelphia, United Airlines, LTV Steel, Kmart, Polaroid, Global Crossing have filed bankruptcy, and they did not have to use a means test. Does the
time
old
has
stale
expired.
bill deal with the
Gentlelady will
loan
suspend.
sharks? This is a travesty and should be defeated.
Well, you know, when you spend upwards of $4 million, and I think that was a low number by the credit card companies, to get their bill, if you will. This was one of the more well-funded legislative initiatives that has probably come through the United States Congress.
It's much worse than even Congresswoman Jackson Lee realizes. This new book reports that the bank spent $36 million lobbying on the bankruptcy bill. Credit card companies added another $13 million. Accounting firms put in another $6 million. And business associations added almost $100 million. That's $154 million in all just to get one bill passed. Ohio's Bob Ney is among the leading Congress members backing industry-supported bills to undercut or preempt the power of states to regulate high-interest loans. His days in office may be limited because of his links to the scandal involving super lobbyist Jack Abramoff.
Most of the protections of debtors are now to be found in the library. You can go and you can find the old legislation and the old laws, but part of the idea of free markets means that you've taken away the protection of people.
Travis Plunkett is a veteran lobbyist for consumers, trying to counterbalance well-funded industry influence peddling.
This is the Hart Senate office building. A lot of the discussion, a lot of the wheeling and dealing isn't done on the floor of the Senate or the floor of the House. It's done in these office buildings or in restaurants nearby. And the major decisions regarding whether legislation is green-lighted or red-lighted, they all, that's all done behind the scenes.
Yeah, lobbying is to a large extent personal relationships.
Former Georgia Governor Roy Barnes encountered bipartisan lobbying to scuttle a predatory loan reform bill he signed. He said the credit card industry used personal pressure.
They hire very good lobbyists who have long-standing relationships. One of the lobbyists that was hired in some of the predatory lending was one of my best friends, and they knew that.
Most of the lobbyists work from Washington's K Street in the law firms and government affairs offices of big companies. Some serve the 10 banks that control the credit card industry and do its bidding on Capitol Hill. The congressional committees that regulate the industry are usually dominated by members from the states where the credit card companies and other banks operate.
It's not a partisan issue. Both sides, Democrats and Republicans, have fallen into this protection of an industry that I don't really believe needs protection.
That's bipartisan support, Democrat and Republican support.
The people who listened to the credit card companies, ignored consumer organizations and women's groups and civil rights groups and unions, and passed a very harsh bankruptcy law, came from both parties, both Republican and Democrat. So it is not a partisan issue.
Well, what we've seen with this kind of financialization of the American economy, where the democratic system and so many democratic institutions have been co-opted and literally bought by the financial service industry, is that we're seeing a big backlash from the American people.
Up against the industry's economic clout and political access, you have a handful of consumer advocates, like the Center for Responsible Lending's Josh Nasser.
For every time that I'm able to meet with a member of Congress, most times that member of Congress has met with tons of industry people already.
Most people think most policies are decided inside the Congress,
right,
like you see on C-SPAN. But what really goes on up here in terms of, these issues we're discussing?
Well, the truth is that a lot of decisions that are made here by the members of Congress, and a lot of the conversations that the lobbyists have with the members of Congress, are made in clubs like here, which is the actual Republican Club, Capitol Hill Club over here. And there are tons of fundraisers every night, and this is where the lobbyists really get one-on-one time with the members of Congress. And a lot of decisions are made, a lot of deals are cut in these buildings right here, not in the Capitol.
When the lobbyists come in, what do they bring with them?
Well, they have to make a contribution to attend. A lot of times it's, $500 to $1,000 per individual, per event.
Citizen activists like members of ACORN representing poor people also try to get their voices heard.
You know, when I was 16 or 55, I earned $5 an hour in a factory. But we can't afford to live like this.
Right. Well, it's better than nothing.
You know what? You should have never, because it is nothing. It is nothing. It is nothing. No, the civil conversation is done.
Who are you up against? You are up against powerful forces, a big industry, big budgets, big lobbyists. They go to meetings. Guy was telling me he goes to a meeting with guys giving out checks with thousands of dollars.
When they have committee hearings, they'll have one panel for the banking industry and the brokers and so forth. Then they'll have another panel for the consumers. We'll fly someone in from Minnesota or something, a person who has been victimized by predatory lending, to tell their story. I mean, this is heart-wrenching, but by then the bankers are gone, the brokers are gone, and members of Congress, some of those are filtered out. It might be after lunch. They don't give a darn. Really, it's all about money.
If you can't maintain a certain amount, no bank is gonna let you have a checking account. So when you gotta cash a check cause your kids need to eat, there's a check cashing place about a block up the street. When the money's tight, you don't have to wait. There's a 500% interest rate that you keep rolling over on that payday loan. And if you can't afford the freezer, you can rent to own. You gotta make those payments, bro, you can't miss one. You can buy it 3 times over by the time that you're done. If you do miss a payment, they will repossess. And when your ice cream melts, it's gonna make a mess. Cause they're predators. They keep devouring more and more. They're predators. They're getting richer by preying on the poor.
When you get a check and you don't have a bank to get the money immediately, you can't wait. It's not like you get paid on Fridays, you're getting cash, and you go take care of your business. You're getting a check. What am I gonna do with this? I don't go to the bank because I don't have an account there. They give me the runaround about this, that, and the other. I gotta have $300 in a bank to start an account and all this. So I go to the check cashing spot. That's the scam. That's how they catch people.
Check cashing stores and tax rebate joints are everywhere in poor neighborhoods. Traditional banks are not.
We're in the center of Bedford-Stuyvesant, Brooklyn, which is one of the largest black communities in this country. You have signs all over the neighborhood that say, no credit, bad credit, no problem, come to us. Need fast cash, come to us.
Sarah Ludwig works with a group that sees the credit crisis as an issue of economic justice.
If you look at this map, for example, what you see for New York City is that this chain, Rent-A-Center, which is a rent-to-own store, has located all of its stores in predominantly low-income communities of color.
You want to buy a 19-inch TV? You can get one at a mall for $195. Renting to own it here will eventually cost you over $700, over 78 installments with an interest rate of 238%.
What happened about 20 years ago is that bankers said they made a anthropological discovery, a breakthrough. They found out that the poor are honest. Almost the only people who believe that they should repay their debts are the poor people. And in fact, the less money you have, the more you believe that the debts should be paid. What this means is that even though the poorer you are, the higher the interest rate you pay, the poorer you are, the greater the likelihood the bank has that you're going to repay the debt.
We're in front of one of the largest tax prep chains in the country, H&R Block, which offers instant money to people. Come in and get your taxes done, and we'll front you your refund and any earned income tax credits you're expected to get right away. You'll get it in 1 to 3 days from us.
What's the interest?
The interest rate is anywhere between 40 and 700% annual percentage rate, because these are very short-term loans that are being made by some of the largest banks in the world and siphon out $1.6 billion a year for tax prep and loans. H&R Block, Jackson Hewitt, Liberty Tax, and all these independent tax preparers are basically functioning as brokers for these very large banks. And what you really should see behind this storefront looming are some of the largest financial institutions in the world, particularly HSBC.
Banks like HSBC don't like to answer tough questions. They refuse to talk to us on camera, even after one spokesman confirmed that the bank does finance rapid tax refund loans. He claimed the loans are not expensive and help consumers. Members of Acorn say that neighborhoods in Washington, D.C., a few miles from the Congress, are being devastated by mortgage scammers who engineer the gentrification of poor neighborhoods through what's called subprime lending. Poor people end up paying higher interest. The real estate industry calls subprime their hottest segment.
It's not about race and so forth anymore. It's more of a class separation in this country. And the very, very wealthy continue to thrive and survive. The rest of us are just trying to scratch and make it.
Josh Zinner and his small team of legal aid lawyers is barely coping.
Here in New York City, we have a foreclosure prevention hotline, and we get calls from all over the city from low and moderate income homeowners who are at risk of foreclosure, particularly from predatory lending. And we're just getting deluged these days. Foreclosure rates are very high.
Welcome to Bushwick in Brooklyn, an area the New York Times calls the hot new neighborhood, in a real estate story that does not describe local suffering. Rick Echevarria's community organization is fighting to help people stay in their homes.
Debt is profitable. One of the questions that we're often asked is, well, Rick, how is it that a bank would lend $600,000 or $800,000 on a property that's only worth $300,000 or $400,000? I mean, what are they going to do if the mortgage borrower doesn't pay the mortgage? And we explain to them, the first lender is selling the debt and being completely reimbursed, so there's no risk for them.
They're selling these mortgages into the secondary market through Wall Street. So what they're doing is they're having these mortgages, basically selling hundreds of millions of dollars worth of these mortgages into these securitization trusts.
I will guarantee you that if you own a house or an apartment, that the bank that issued you your mortgage is not the bank that holds your mortgage today.
The severity of the problem of home mortgage lending in a predatory way may be quantified in the following terms. You are talking in recent years of a problem that every year transfers hundreds of billions of dollars.
Hundreds of billions?
Hundreds of billions of dollars.
You said billions.
I said billions, not millions, from the pockets of the poor to people who are far better positioned than their so-called victims.
That's what happened to the Fayez family.